Hello guys, welcome to the next session of developing e-commerce application from scratch using Angular and Spring Boot. In the last session we discussed on how we can create an API so that we can fetch all the cart details. So in a moment we will talk about that particular API. But in this session what we will just see, what I'll just show you, I'll just show you how we can add one functionality, one more option, that is cart for the user. And whenever user will click on this cart button, then we will just show whatever products that are there in his or her cart, we will just show all those product details to the user in the table format. So in this way we will just show all the product details that are added into the user's cart. So this particular option, which is cart option, will be available only to the user. So if you just if you just log in with the admin, then you will not be able to see this particular option over here. So these functionalities also we are going to handle in this session itself. So in this session we will just cover all this particular functionality related to this cart button. So now I'll just show you how we can implement it. So without wasting much more time, let me just go to the VS Code and let's see how we can implement this particular functionality. Now I'm in my Visual Studio Code, but before writing any of the line, let me just first of all show you the API that we have just created in the last session itself. So in the last session we created this particular API, that is get cart details, and if I just click on the send button, so it will return me all the it will return me the products that are there in my cart. Now over here, one thing that we have to understand is, if you just see, like in the headers we have authorization header and we are passing the JWT token in the header itself, and with the help of JWT token at the backend it is able to get the username. With this JWT token it is understanding which user is currently requesting, and according to that it is returning us the response. So it is returning us all the cart details and all the products which are there in the user's cart. So this is how we are getting the cart details. The next thing that we can just do is we can just see how we can try to use these particular API and how we can show this particular information on our UI. So if I just go to the VS Code again, the very first thing that we have to do is we have to generate one component. So let me just first of all use npm run nggc, and let me just give the name as cart itself. So let me just give the name as cart and let me hit the enter. The next thing that we have to do is we have to configure a path. So if I just go to the app routing module TS file, then one thing that we have to just do is we have to just configure a path for user only. So we just want to allow this cart tab to be accessible only by the user. So we can just use user specific path itself. So if I just show you on line number 54, we have created one path for buy product. So this particular, if you just see, we are just allowing this particular path to be accessible only by the user. Similar requirements we have right now. So let me just copy this, let me just copy it and let me paste it something like this. And then the next thing that we can just do is we can just change the path. So let me just give the path as a cart. Let me just give the component as a cart component. We can just keep this can activate auth guard, and we can just keep this data as a roles, and we don't require this resolver, so we can just remove it. So we can just keep it as it is, something like this. And now let me just save these changes. Now we are done with configuring a path. The next thing that we can just do is we can just add this particular option in the header. So if I just go back to the Chrome, then we are just showing some header. So as of now I am not logged in, so let me first of all start my application. So let me just use npm run start, and let me first of all start the application so that I can just show you what is the option that we want to add. So let me just wait till my application is compiling. Yes, now if I just go back to the Google Chrome and if I just refresh it, let me just try to log in with the user. So let me just use username and password, and let me just click on the home. So as of now, if you just see, we have the option that is called as a home Similarly, we have to add one more option that is called as a cart. So we just want one new option at the right hand side of the home option. So if to do this, we have to just go to the header component. So if I just go to the header dot component dot html file, then over here we have this option that is called as a button. So let me just copy this particular button and let me just paste it over here, something like this, and let me just change the text to the cart, and we have to change router link to the cart, something like this. So we have to give this particular path that we have created over here, and then I will just keep the color as it is, like primary color itself. The only one thing that we have to do is we have to just give ngIf, and we want to show this option only if user is logged in. So we can just add something like this. So we can just use is admin, and we can just call the function, and we can just give not operator in front of it. So if user is logged in, then we will be able to see this particular option that is called as a cart option. Now let me save these changes. Let's first of all see whether this particular option is available or not. So as of now, yes, we are able to see this particular option. If I just click on it, then we are able to go to the cart component itself. So we are able to redirect to the cart component. Now let me just click on logout, and let me just log in with the admin. Let's see what happens. So if I just log in with the admin, like admin123 and admin@pass, and yes, so we are not be able to see like the cart option for the admin. So that cart option is only available for users, it's not available for the admin. So it is working as expected. Now let me again log in with the user, something like this, and now let me just click on cart again. Now over here what we want is we want to show this table format, and we want to show all the information that we are retrieving from our API. So to do this, what we can just do is, very first thing, like to show it in a table format, we are just going to use Angular material table. So if I just go to the material.angular.io site, and we have the components. Inside the components we will be able to see the table. So in the table we have the examples, and we can just like follow up any example, and we can just use the code in that way. I will show you how we can write it step by step, but if you just know like how to use the Angular material table, maybe you can just skip that part and you can just try to show the information on your own. But if you just want me to show you every single thing, then you can just follow my sessions. And then one more thing, if I just go to the VS Code, and if I just go to the show product details HTML file, then over here also we have used Angular material table. So if you just want, you can just copy paste the code from here as well. So in whichever way you like, you can just copy and paste the code, or maybe you can just write every single line that I'm just doing over here. The very first thing that we have to just do is we have to just copy this particular table tag, and alongside we can just copy this particular ng container tag. So you can just copy the table and ng container, and you can just come back to the VS Code, and then if I just go to the cart component.html file, so if I just go to the cart component.html file, so very first thing that we have to just do is we have to just use one class that is called as a container, something like this. And there is one more class that we have to use which is empty5. So empty5 and container are all the bootstrap classes. Empty5 means like margin top, and 5 is nothing but a value. The next thing that we can just do is we can just paste the code that we have just copied. So we have just copied this table and ng container. Alongside, if I just come back to the Google Chrome again, we have to copy last two tr tags, and we have to copy the closing table tag, something like this. So let me copy it and let me just paste it over here, something like this. And now let me just save these changes. Now over here, as of now, we are getting some issues. So let's see how we can tackle those particular issues. So we can just remove these commented lines, something like this. Okay, so the very first issue that we are getting is we are getting these displayed columns. So we are getting the error to the displayed columns. If I just go back and if I just go back to the TS file of it, then we have array of strings and the name of the array is displayed columns. So let me just copy this particular array name and let me just come back to the VS Code. Let me just go back to the TS file, that cart.component.ts file, and let me just paste it over here, something like this. Now if I just come back to the HTML, then we don't have any error right now. We have to change these particular names in a moment, but as of now I'll just keep it as it is. And let me just come back to the HTML file again. The next error that we are getting is at the data source. So data source is nothing but like the data that we want to show. So we have to give the name of the data source, like from where the data is coming and how we want to show the data. So to do this, what we are just going to do is we are just going back to the cart.component.ts file, and over here what I'm going to do is I'm just going to declare one data source. So how we have to do is you can just follow up the example and you can just write it over here. But if I just show you properly, then in our case we have to first of all call this particular API, that is get car details, and whatever response is coming back, then like we have to show that particular response as a data source. So how we can just do is we have to first of all call this particular API. So to call this particular API, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to okay, so I'm just going inside my services and I'm just going inside my product services. Over here inside my product service, we have to create one more API. So we have to create one more function to call the API. So let's suppose public, and over here let me just call get cart details, something like this. And over here we have to just write return this dot http client dot get, and then we have to give our API. So our API is nothing but http://localhost:9090/get cart details. So this is our API. So let me just copy it and let me just paste it over here, and let me just give the semi-comma at the end. The next thing that we have to do is we have to go to the cart.component.ts file, and over here we have to inject our product service. So let me just use product service, which is of type product service, something like this. And then next thing that we have to do is we have to create one function. Let's suppose get cart details, something like this, and we have to just use this dot product service dot get cart details, something like this, and then we have to subscribe it. So let me just call subscribe, something like this. Now this particular subscribe takes two arguments. First one is obviously like success response and second one is a error response. So let me just give the name as response itself, something like this, and let me just console.log my response, something like this. On the other hand, let me just create one more callback to handle the error. So let me just give the name as error itself, and let me just use console.log error, something like this. And now let me just save these changes. So get car details function we have to call. So I'm just going to call this get car details function from my ng on init. So let me just call it like this dot get car details, something like this. Now this get car details is going to return us some response, like it is going to return us all the details. So we want some array, and like we want some variable or we want some list where we will save this particular response. So as of now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make it as a, let's suppose cart details is equals to, and let me just make it as a array, something like this. And inside a response, let me just as of now use this dot cart details is equals to response, something like this. Now over here we are getting one error. Let's see what is the error that it is giving. So over here it is giving the issue due to like this object, and because we are not be able to we will not be able to assign this response to the card details. So what we can just do is we can just make it as a any type array, something like this. So let's see, again still we are getting the issue. Let's see what is happening over here. So over here let me just give the response of type any, something like this, and yes, now our issues are resolved. Inside my HTML, let me just make it as a cart details, something like this. And now let's see what happens first. So if I just go back to the Google Chrome, and if I just come back to the if I just come back to my cart, and if I just refresh it, so over here we are not able to get anything. Let me just try to open the console. Let's see what happens. So inside the console we are able to get a lot of issues. So let's try to understand every single issue, and we can just try to resolve those particular issues. So over here we are getting the array of 10. That means we are able to get the success response, because over here if you just see, we are able to use console.log, and we are just like logging the response. So we are getting that particular response over here. So if I just open this particular array, and if I just expand any particular item, then we are able to get like cart ID, and then we are able to get this product, and we are able to get the user as well. So we are getting the success response. The next thing that we have to understand is, let's see, it is right now it is saying like could not find column with a name with ID name. So over here it is saying that it is not be able to find any column. So now if I just come back to the VS Code, then if I just go to the HTML, then over here we have the column, like we have the column definition as a position, and over here we have specified only one column, but inside this we have specified 4 columns. So let me just remove those remaining 3 columns, and let me just save it as it is. Now let me just go to the Google Chrome, and yes, we are able to get the very first column, that is called as a number column. So in similar way we have to just assign like multiple columns itself, but we are able to get very first column, that is a number column. So in our case what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use very first column as product name, and then second column will be product description, third column will be the product actual price, and last column will be the product discounted price. So in total I'm just going to use 4 different columns. So let's first of all use those 4 different columns. So let me just give it as a product, or maybe instead of product let me just give it as a name itself. Then we have to give description, then we have to give, let's suppose price, and lastly we have to give discounted price, something like this. And now if I just come back to the HTML, the next thing that inside HTML we have to do is we have to just copy this column, and we have to just paste it for the 4 times, because we have the 4 different columns. So let me just paste it for the 4 times, something like this. Now the next thing that we have to do is we have to just copy the very first column name, that is name, and we have to paste it inside the mat column definition. Let me just change this text as well. Let me just make it as name itself. Then second column we have to copy, which is description, and let me just make it as a description itself, and let me just make it as a description again. Then third column we have is a price. So let me just copy the price, and let me just paste it something like this. So let me just paste it something like this. And lastly let me just copy the discounted price, and let me just paste it something like this, And now if I just go back to the Google Chrome, let's see what is happening right now. So it is showing table in something like this. So this is why, because as of now we don't have any data, and that is the reason it is showing something like this. But let's try to add some data, and I think it should resolve every single issues. The next thing that we can just do is we can just do one thing. We can just use the proper names over here. So what we have to just do is we have to just use element. So first of all, we have to just understand what is the element. So element is nothing but one row which is present inside this cart details. So if I just show you, the cart details is nothing but an array. So this array will be having different indexes, right? Because at 0th index it will be having some data, at very first index it will be having some data, and similarly like it will be having multiple indexes, right? So this element is nothing but you can consider it as a like one index. So for like very first iteration, element will contain all the data for the 0th index. For second iteration, element will contain all the data for first index, right? And so on. So element is nothing but one row which is present inside your cart details. So how you can just access it? So to access it, we have to just understand how our JSON structure looks like. So if I just go back to the console, then what we can just do is we can just try to expand it. So very first thing that we have is product. So if I just expand the 0th element, so we have the product array, or maybe not an array, but we have the product property. So we can just copy the product property, and let me just come back to the VS Code. Over here, let me just do one thing. Let me just make it as a element dot product. So let me just give it as element dot product, and we have to like assign the name. So what we can just do is we can just expand the product again, and we can just copy this particular product name property. So let me just copy this product name property, and let me just paste it over here, something like this. And now let me just make it okay. So let me just make it like this, and let me just save these changes. Let's see what happens on the Google Chrome. So if you just see, we are able to access the product name, and product name is visible on the on the table. Similarly, we have to access the description. So how we can access it? We have to just use product, and inside our product we have one more like product dot product description. So let me just copy the product description. Let me just come back to the second column configuration, and let me just make it as a element dot product description. Similarly, for actual price, let me just copy the actual price. So let me just copy it, and let me just make it as a element dot product dot actual price, something like this. And lastly, let me just copy the discounted price. So let me just copy the discounted price, and let me just paste it like element dot product dot discounted price, product discounted price. And now let me just save these changes. Now if I just close the console, then we are able to see this particular we are able to see the name, we are able to see the description, then we have the price and discounted price. So as of now, the table structure is looking a bit messy, because we have lot of data, and our table width is bit limited. So what we can just do is we can just try to remove this particular container class, and let me just now save the changes. Let's see how it looks like. So if I just go back to the Google Chrome, so yes, now it is looking something like this. So again, it is looking bit messy, because if I just show you, like description is taking a lot more space than expected. So similar table we have used. So if I just log in with the admin, so let me just log in with the admin @pass, something like this. And if I just go to the show product details, so similar table we have already used. And if you just see like product description, so we have configured a width for this product description column. So if I just go back to the VS Code, and if I just go back to the show product details, and if I just go back to the show product details HTML, then we have configured a width for this description. So in similar way we can just configure a width for our product description. So if I just go back to the CSS file, then over here if you just see, like we have all these particular classes. So what we can just do is we can just copy these particular classes. So we have created like table, we have used width is equals to 100%. Then for table TD we have used a padding of 10 pixel. And for this last I will just explain what it is exactly, but we can just copy it as it is. So it is very small, you can just type it down as well, but I'm just copying it. And if I just go back to the cart.component.css and let me just paste it over here. Now over here what we have to just do is we have to come back to the HTML, and the next thing that we have to just do is we have to just copy this mat column definition value. So in my case mat column definition value is a description with a capital D, so we have to copy it. And let me just come back to the CSS. Now over here if you just want to give like if you just want to assign any styles, or if you want to give styles to any specific columns, then what we have to do is we have to just give dot mat dash column, then dash, and then we have to give the value that is there inside the mat column definition. So you can just copy this particular description with a capital D, and you can just make it as mat dash column dash description with a capital D, something like this. Let me just keep the width as 35% only, and let me just save these changes. Let's see what happens on the Google Chrome. And to again access the cart, if I just log in with my user, something like this, and if I just go to the cart, so okay, if you just see, like now we are able to give like or we are able to like assign only 35% of width to the description column. So again what we can just do is we can just go back to the HTML, and we can just try to keep our container class as it is, something like this. And now let's see how it looks like. Yes, now it is looking perfectly fine, and it is looking as expected. So we are able to get all the data in our mat table, and it is looking perfectly fine. In the next session what we will just do is we will just maybe add one button over here that is called as a checkout, so that user can check out all these items, and user can buy all these items which are there in his or her card. So we are able to we will like implement that functionality in upcoming sessions. So I hope you got an idea around like how we can show all the cart information to the user on the UI, and this particular option will be available only to the user, and it is not available for the admin. So these kind of conditions also we have handled. If you still have any questions, let me know into a comment section. I will try my best to help you out in that case. And I hope you enjoyed this session, and I'll see you in the next session.